Good afternoon and welcome to TCAM Thursdays, your midday cultural break. I'm Dr. Lana Reeves, the Education and Community Outreach Director here at the Kansas African American Museum. And today we're going to talk about Portrait of a Man, and we're going to get some living portraits, some living words about these portraits that we have here in our current exhibition at the Kansas African American Museum. And so today I have with me some special men from the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we'll start right now with our guest here to my left.
Hello, my name is Reggie Davidson. I'm the Superintendent of Recreation for the City of Wichita Parks and Rec Department.
Hello, my name is Corey Lyons. I'm the current Recreation Director at McAdams Recreation Center.
My name is Larry Dennis. I'm a retired employee of the City of Wichita's Wichita Park and Recreation.
My name is Clifford Normore, and I'm a retired Center Director of McAdams Recreation Center.
Some pretty awesome guys that we have today here too. So I'm pretty sure that you probably have a good idea who we plan to talk about. We really want to start the conversation and talk about the person who McAdams Park is named after, Mr. Emerson McAdams. And we're also going to talk a little bit more about a couple of the other guys who are also featured in our Portrait of a Man exhibition, including Mr. Charles Goose Dowdy, who was a coach for tennis there, and he also has a tennis field named after him down there, right? So first, let's get a little background on McAdams Park, and I think Mr. Davis was going to tell us a little bit about the Parks and Recreation Commission and what McAdams Park was originally.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the Park and Recreation Department. I'm going to defer to Cliff and Larry on some of the history there. They are part of that living history. But the Parks and Rec Department is really growing. We're seeing a lot of new development and things that are happening, especially in the Northeast community. We're excited about that. I'm sure everyone's aware of what the new development that we had there with the pool is going really well this summer, and we're looking forward to building on that moving forward. We also have some exciting things that are going on there with our collaboration with League 42, that Mr. Dennis is on the board there as well. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the things that we're doing there in the community, and looking forward to continue to build upon that. One of the things that we pride ourselves on doing is being inclusive as much as possible as we can, and looking for those partnerships that we can continue to expand programs to the young people in the community that we proudly serve.
All right, awesome. Now, you were going to tell us a little bit more then about the history of the park, McAdams Park, as it was originally known as McKinley Park, right?
Right. A lot of that I didn't witness, but I learned because when I first started for the City of Wichita, I was assistant director to Mr. Normal.
Okay.
And that was back in 1976. And all the history I know about Mr. McAdams, McKinley, and all the other directors, Duckett was there for a while, Marcellus Duckett, Cliff Fanning, and there was one lady, Jan, I can't remember, Chapman. And so a lot of the history is just what I've learned from Cliff. When I was invited, like I said, he's a walking legend, and he can tell you about some of those guys. I mean, I can give you some of the things that we went through and how we've grown as a city and a department. But Cliff can give you the history on like Mr. McAdams and Mr. McAfee.
Okay.
Well, we talk about Mac first, and I can talk about a lot of things. Right now, I just like to say that I'm pleased to see the shape that the McAdams is in, of all of the changes. But when we go back to real history, we talk about McKinley. I came to McAdams in 1953. That's when I first met Emerson McAdams. Tall man, strong man, and didn't take no stuff. He ran the park well, and he was in charge. And so there was a lot of kids, because that was the only place African Americans could go back during that time, was McAdams. Cleveland, all down through Cleveland, the Y, where, you know, we were very segregated during that time. Well, over the years, I would go out there and play ball. I played ball for McAdams, and, you know, softball, basketball, baseball. And we sat at the basketball court all day. If you wasn't good enough, you didn't get a chance to play. You just sat around the basketball court. And so one thing, they built the center in 58. See, everybody was outside. All the activity was held outside. And down the canal route was the equipment room building was right on side of the canal, like leaning over in the canal. The concession stand, side of the canal. Tennis court, side of the canal. Swimming pool, side of the canal. And where the swimming pool is now located, that was the golf course. And so all of the changes that has been made, I've had the opportunity to witness the changes and some of the racism that went on in McAdams, where McAdams was given hand-me-downs.
Mm-hmm.
And so Emerson, I don't know if he took it. I don't think he did, because he was an outspoken guy, big guy, about 6'3", 6'4", and big hard gut, and he would bump you. And he was a super guy, a nice guy. And so I went to work in 1970 for Marcelo Duckett. He was the director. Well, they was giving us used equipment. And I said, I went through this when I grew up in Oklahoma. And then I'm bringing my kids to the park. They don't need to go through this. So one day, and I knew they had new equipment in the storage. So one day, one of the supervisors came out and bought a sack of used basketballs. And so I looked at him, and they had promoted me to director. And so I said, I don't want them. And he turned around, went back to the car, and got new balls, bought them in. I always let the NAACP, everybody knew what was going on of how they was treating McAdams, our kids. And so Joe Brown, she was over the Board of Education. So I would let her know, and she would call the top man in recreation, Tommy Allen. You probably heard of Tommy Allen. He was the director. So Tommy would call me and ask me what did I think, and I said, well, they told me I didn't make decisions. He said, like hell, you're gonna make this one and you're gonna make all the rest. And so that's how I got to be in charge of McAdams. I ran it after that. And I felt that if you're the director, people want to see you. They don't want to go downtown, because you don't want that burden. If you got somebody you don't trust out there, you don't need them. So really, the guys in charge of the center should make the decisions, but you got to talk to the people downtown. But respect goes both ways. And during that time, they didn't respect us too much. So I demanded respect like I would had to give to them.
So now, did you get that respect because you started out under Mr. McAdams and he kind of showed you the way?
If I'm the director, people want to come to me, talk to me, and especially with the situation we was under during that time. See, they sent me to a rec center, and they used to have TARP, and to operate McAdams like they did at the white centers. Well, the way they did at the white centers, they would play 3 records. The first record, anybody's choice. The second time, you got to pick a partner. If you didn't on the third time, you had to go home or sit down. And I felt that if a kid can come to a recreation and enjoy himself and he's sitting there and not cause no problem, there's no need of punishing a child. So I ran it the way we run it at McAdams. I couldn't do it the way they did it there. So, and they put me at Evergreen 3 years because they couldn't keep a white director, because they had blacks, whites, Spanish, and they would burst the windows out and all that stuff. They had a lot of problems. So they sent me over there because I'm a big guy and thought I would be rough with them. But I had kids too. And so I treat every kid like I wanted to be treated. I had 3 leaders to quit because they thought my kids should have privilege over the others. And I said, no, all of these are my kids. So we didn't work it that way. But when they put me over there for 3 years, they built a new center, but they didn't want to give me the new center. So they moved me back to McAdams, made me director, and moved Marcellus Duckett to an old building. It was called Hilltop.
Mm-hmm.
So after they moved me back there, and I demanded all the things that they was, giving out. Well, I started the Golden Age program, and I had guys that can really shoot pool. Well, the equipment they bought was cheap stuff. And so the guys came to me and they wanted to buy a pool table, one of them good ones. So I went downtown like I normally go through, to my supervisor. And they said, no way. So I talked to Joe Brown. She called Tommy Allen. Then Tommy called me and he said, if they buy the table, it belongs to the center. I said, I explained that to him. So that was a decision I had to make, because I made that decision. They went and bought the table, and we just started doing good things after that, and just had to keep fighting.
Okay, so now tell me about some of the things that you learned from Mr. McAdams.
I learned a lot from Mr. McAdams. I learned that you don't take no stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You treat everybody right. Rules is rules. That was solved. And so, but yeah, they had problems dealing with people like myself and Emerson, anybody that's strong.
Mm-hmm.
But you do the job. If you're doing the job, it shouldn't be no problem. But race played a big part of it. And so that's what really got under my skin, because we came up, when I came up, we couldn't try on caps in the stores. And if I picked the cap up and put it on my head and it was too small, that was mine. Couldn't try on shoes. You had to know the size of your shoe. And if you got shoes too small, then somebody, the next brother, whoever had a smaller feet had them.
Mm-hmm.
But all that kind of stuff. And so that kind of set in my mind, when I had family. And I didn't want them to have to go through what I went through. And so I was fair to all the kids. I had to send some home, just like Mac had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's time that you have to do that. But we had a heck of a program. And but I got along with most of the people, that got along with me.
Okay. So what about you, Mr. Dennis? What are some things that you can tell us about your days hearing about Mr. McAdams?
First of all, when I first went to McAdams, I was working under Cliff. I was his assistant director. And you can kind of see from what he just talked about how it shaped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already been raised to be the kind of person, to treat everybody the same. But anyway, I worked there with Cliff for all those years, and I learned a lot from Cliff. And like he's saying, there was a lot of racism. We'd go down to our staff meetings. He would never bite his tongue. And, growing up here in Wichita, it kind of startled me at first, but it taught me that if it's right, you have to speak for what's right and what's the truth. And so I stayed there, and then finally I got a promotion as a director, and it was to Evergreen Recreation Center, which is still with the city. And that program was down. I think it was last in revenue, cost recovery, everything, attendance. So I was able to bring it back up, and it was successful. And so one thing I can be thankful for is that I was a director at 5 of the recreation centers.
Awesome.
And what that did, that allowed me to see how different communities were, and how the centers were operated, and how they were given the equipment and all the tools and resources that they needed. So it helped me when I was moved back to McAdams. And at that time, McAdams was struggling, and we had to fight there for a while because the city was talking about closing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do everything that I could to keep it open, because I knew that it meant so much to people in that community. And it got to the point where it meant so much to me that it became a part of me.
All right.
And so my life, I kind of was dedicated to McAdams. You know, other than my religion and family, that was right up there.
Right up there with them, huh?
And so I recognized, and from being at the other centers and realized how I could increase the revenue and the, you know, the activity and attendance at McAdams. And I was successful in doing that. And it's still open to this day.
Yep, it's still open today, and we have Mr. Lyons here who's in charge of it now.
Yeah.
So what's it like for you over there, Mr. Lyons?
So for me, it's a little different than what they experienced. I originally started at Lynette Woodard under Angela Buckner for about 5 years. And I always heard a story about McAdams, about it being the first park that African American were allowed to go to. When I'm down here, you always hear stories about Mr. McAdams, about the bullhorn, him yelling at everybody. He didn't play back then, but right now, it's a lot different. It's the racism and all that, it doesn't exist anymore. To me, I haven't seen anything like that, but it came a long way when we're continually building on what we built on when Mr. Dennis was there. So I feel like it's going in the right direction and right path, and it's going to be a big park, you know, in Wichita.
Okay. You kind of Mr. Don't Play too, right?
Don't play, don't play. And so they would give me that day off, and I'm supposed to be there because I don't have no assistant. So that was some of the stuff that went on. That's what really bothered me, and things that I had to go through back during my time. And but we survived.
Okay.
Yeah, we survived.
All right.
I have one thing I want to say too. And like Cliff was saying, when I became the assistant director there and went through all of the racism and the way they treated everybody, and then looking at how McAdams didn't have the equipment and all that, I ended up being moved around from different centers. Like I was saying before, I was at Lynette Woodard Rec Center, Evergreen, Edgemore. I was director there. Orchard, I was a director there for 3 years. And that helped me to establish the point where my longevity was. I worked 42 years for the city of Wichita. But a lot of people don't know that it took me 21 years to become a director of a rec center when I went to Evergreen. And there was many years that I knew that I deserved the promotion, but I never did. And I was kind of like, as long as I can help people wherever I am and help kids, you know, it was fine. But like Cliff is saying, the racism back then, you wouldn't believe some of the stories or things that we had to go through to get to where we are now.
Okay.
And like Corey said, it's not as prevalent or as like it was back then with us. And but he has it going the right direction, which is up. And McAdams right now, to me, is probably one of the best park in the city.
All right.
And you know, and like I was telling someone a few weeks ago that if you look at all the amenities at McAdams, there's no other park that has that, Corey. I mean, you got your baseball.
Got a great place to work, huh?
Football, baseball.
Pretty
tennis,
awesome.
Basketball. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
And I noticed you have some new things happening over there too. Didn't you just receive some new upgrades to, what is it, League 42, the Jackie Robinson statue, and some new murals and stuff that are over there? And I think, a couple of years ago, I think the Juneteenth committee painted the basketball courts and stuff. And then you opened a new swimming pool, and you changed the name of it to the Charles McAfee swimming pool. So it's like, okay, it's a pretty awesome place. And then what really is, like I said, the thing, I want to bring it back to the fact that all of this is happening around this great place for kids to hang out. And it's also got the names of these awesome men attached to it. There's Emerson McAdams, there's Charles Dowdy, then there's also Jackie Robinson and League 42, and then there's Charles McAfee pool. There's all these great names attached to it. And I know you guys didn't get to be these awesome guys who can speak to these situations like this unless there were guys like that who kind of informed and inspired you. And I know you fellas are new to town compared to these guys. If you didn't grow up here, you've been here long enough that this is your place, right? So let's talk about some of those guys those African American men that kind of helped to influence the men that you are today. I know some of them may be represented here on the walls in Portrait of a Man, but I have a feeling that you guys specifically probably have some guys that we don't know about that come from the towns where you grew up that helped you. And you said you came from Oklahoma. Now, did you originally, you grew up here in Wichita,
Wichita.
right? So you probably can talk about all these guys that
Oh,
are on the
yeah,
wall
yeah, I
and
can.
tell how knowing that they were here and the things that they did that kind of opened doors to help you to be able to deal with that racism and make changes and make it work for all the kids. As you said, that it's open to all the kids. Because I was looking at some of the pictures of some of the kids that work in your activities, and it is indeed very well represented. So who'd like to go first with a story about their most inspirational male or whatever, the man that made them who they are?
I think I'll start off with that. Like you mentioned, I'm a transplant here to Wichita. I've been here since 2018. I'm originally from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in the Southeast is where I grew up. I think those men that were influential in me, were shaping me into the man I am today, is my father, my grandfather, and my oldest brother. They made a lot of sacrifices, a lot of good knowledge and things that they taught me to help me stay on the right course, that I wouldn't lead down some of the paths that I saw some of my peers go down. And I think I'm grateful for that. And I lost both my father and my grandfather in November of last year. So when you don't have those individuals around and make you really reflect back on some of those things that you taught and they've showed you along the way to help you become who you are today. So I think those are probably the three most influential men that I can think of that helped.
Put their names out there.
That's Henry Walter Davidson, who is my father, my brother Ernest Davidson Sr., and then my grandfather John Peter Brown. The three men that helped shape me into I believe, who the man I am today.
Awesome. And Mr. What we just going around, Mr. Get Mr. Lyons in on it over here.
So the town I'm from, we're from the St. Louis area. It's a little suburb city outside. My grandpa, and then I had a cousin. His name is Xavier, and in that city you get pushed in the wrong direction. And they pushed me. You can go out and see what else is in the world, and go out there and make a difference. When I moved down here, I met a guy. He's a little younger than me, but he's really outspoken to me. Is Joseph Shepard. He was a big influence on everything. Like when I was in college, I was a shy person at first. I didn't like talking to nobody. He kind of like pushed me out of my shell. He was like, "Oh, be an alpha," and he was a big influence, and he pushed me to where I'm at today.
He's a good friend to the museum too.
All right, awesome.
He's pushing us out there too. He's trying to die too. And what's your grandfather's name?
His name is Robert Shoemake.
All right, yeah. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, I was listening to Reggie. My dad was an influence on me, the biggest influence on my life. His name was Reverend J.P. Dennis Jr. And he and my mom's Sarah Nell Dempsey Dennis, they were influence on me. It's kind of like I would think about how we grew up in one house with 2 bedrooms and 9 kids.
All right.
So anyway, they were the biggest influence in my life. But as far as work related, I have to say Cliff Normore and people like Mr. Lafayette Norwood and the Goose Dowdy and Mr. McAdams. I didn't have a chance to get to know him, but I've heard stories from Cliff.
His legacy, huh?
Yeah, and I learned from Cliff how to stand up and how to speak up when you know you're right, or when you see other people being mistreated, you speak up for those people too. So Cliff already knows, but I like to thank him publicly for being an influence on my life when it comes to work in Wichita Parks and Recreation. Then I've never been the one to want a lot of credit on things, but I think it's important that people realize what Cliff had to go through, and then what I had to go through. Like you talked about the courts being painted. I even had one time we had a group of kids from Oklahoma City come and paint the stripes on the court, and so. It's just so many things. I was trying to get the beautification project going where it looked as good as it could. And I had to stay on them about cutting the grass. They wouldn't cut McAdams grass for a month. So that's something that just something that I can throw out there on what we went through. And then as far as being treated like sometimes like we weren't even men, but you had to speak up, and then you realize that you can fall back and understand that, you know, in my case, God was with me through it all. And like I said, not only did I work at McAdams, I was able to work at the other rec centers, and they ended up, when they moved me back to McAdams, when they were talking about closing it,
You saved it.
yeah, I had a lot of resources and information that I knew that they would have to treat us the same at McAdams as they had the other rec centers.
All
So
right.
those are the people, and I just wanted to mention my parents there, Mr. Cliff Normore.
All right. Mr. Normore.
Well, there was a lot of men in my life that, because my mother left when I was 5 years old, and my dad, we were raised on the farm, poor. But I looked up to a lot of men in the neighborhood that had a good relationship with their kids. And so I learned a lot from that. Because I left home when I was 13, tried to go in the Army, but Korea War was ending. And so an old guy had been in 8 years, and he told me, said, son, say, you need to go back home, go to school, because war is over. And so that was the best advice I could have. So I went back home, and I decided to come to Wichita. Came to Wichita, and you couldn't hardly get a job if you didn't have a high school education. And so I found myself going back home, and I would come in the summertime every summer. And finally got my education. And so good things just started happening. But I would always look up at the men that had good relationship with their kids, with their sons, and that really did a lot for me. And how Mac handled everything at the park, and I was just a youngster then.
You knocked down some doors for us, for sure.
I had to, because everybody, just like I felt that I had to lead for somebody coming behind me. See, I had to be a leader, and I wanted to do it the right way. Everybody can't be an outspoken person. You got to know when and how. But if you can't deal with the person ahead of you, then there got to be somebody else that you can deal with. So if you carry yourself in a way that people will understand that you're serious, I think they'll take a different look at you. But just to be a militant and arrogant person and don't respect anybody, you're not going to get anywhere.
That's not going to work.
But I just had to thank the good Lord, and my grandmother was Olivia Normore Jackson, who was very important in my life. But I didn't want my kids to come up like I did. So I've been married 62 years.
Congratulations.
And I'm 84 years old. So I've gone through a lot, and I've been blessed.
Amen.
Just to give you an idea what we had to go through, Reggie, Corey, we would go to staff meetings, and I would be sitting next to Cliff. It got so bad that Cliff started putting a tape recorder in his shirt pocket just to get what people would say to us and how they would say things against McAdams. So just to give you an idea of the kind of things that we went through back then.
So thank God you don't have to deal with that today, Mr. Lyons. So now I know we're here near the end of our show today. And if there's a final word that you all would like to add about either the person that you want to be or the person that you want the young people who are connected to you, some advice that you'd want to give them, if there's a word that you'd like to add, this is the time to do that. So again, we'll start down here with you, Mr. Davidson.
Well, I just want to say that, I appreciate, all the hard work and the groundwork that was put in place to give us the opportunity that we have today. And I think that a lot of time that's taken for granted. We don't get an opportunity to thank people for the path that they've created for us and while they're still here living. So I want to tell you guys, I appreciate your support, your hard work that you have put in to get us to the point where we are today. And I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. There's some opportunity for us to continue to grow and expand some of the things that we have and create an equal playing field for regardless of what your background is, that you have opportunity to come in and enjoy whatever we have to offer here in Wichita. And I'm excited about being a part of that and helping it grow into the future.
Mr. Lyons?
I'd like to say the same as Reggie. Appreciate everything you guys did for me and everybody at the McAdams Park at the moment. We are moving in the right direction. Like I said before, I can't wait to see what happens after, everything is put in place. Again, I just want to thank you guys and yeah.
Okay. Mr. Dennis?
I'd just like to say I thank both of you for that compliment to us. But like you said, I think we're moving in the right direction. I remember when Mr. Davidson came on board, I sat back, checked him out, watched him, observed, listened, and then it dawned on me that this is the perfect individual to be here with the city of Wichita to lead us forward. Not just for McAdams, but for the whole department. He's that kind of person that is gifted, and I just want to say thank you. And then also, Corey, I want to thank you because I've seen you, I've watched you, and you have a lot there at McAdams where the young folks say you can blow that place up and find out the kind of things that they want going on there, upgrade some things, and I know that you're the man that can do it for us. So thank you.
I appreciate the time that I have spent with the city, and even though there were some difficulties, but I enjoyed it. So I had a potato chip truck. A lot of kids didn't have transportation, so I want you to know that I would haul them wherever they needed to go. We had track meet, I would haul them, and people would bring their kids and leave them all day because they had that trust in me. And so I appreciate my opportunity to work at McAdams and take care of a whole lot of kids. And so, and not just kids, I've had role model principals that worked for me, part-time teachers. Then I learned a lot from them also. So they come in and help run our programs. And so it's been a big change, but I like what I see now in McAdams.
Thank you so much, fellows, for stopping in today with T-Camp Thursdays, your midday cultural break. We'd like to just say that this has been a great opportunity to not only look at some great guys who are featured as Portrait of a Man, but to also look at some living legends that are sitting right here at the table with me today, who are also going a long way to showing young men how to be the best kind of people they can be. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in today to T-Camp Thursdays, your midday cultural break.